I'm not sure if many of you have heard of it, but Adventureland is a small amusement park in Long Island. But when I lived on Long Island, Adventureland was my favorite place to visit. Over the summer, I'd beg my mom to bring me at least once a week. I had to be at least 6 years old when this happened. My mom and her very pregnant sister brought me and my younger brother to the park just like they always would. But this trip was different. After going on a few rides, my aunt began to notice the same man following us around. I swear I will never forget what he looked like. He was tall, thin, with salt and pepper hair. He was wearing one of those muscle tees and shorts. I guess she just brushed it off until she noticed he was alone, no kids, and kept staring at me, smiling. I was on the merry-go-round when he approached me. He came up to me on the ride, smiled, and said, "I would love to take your picture sometime." My aunt lost it at that point. She started screaming at him to get away from me. She and my mother dragged us to this little first aid house where they demanded to speak to security. I was hysterically crying at this point. I really didn't know what was going on or why everyone was freaking out, but I remember having this terribly uneasy feeling. Apparently, the guy got kicked out the previous week for taking pictures of a visiting Girl Scout troop on some of the rides. Somehow he managed to get back into the park. After everything was sorted out with security, my mom and aunt decided it was time to leave. When we stepped outside of this little house, he was sitting on the bench eating an ice cream, waiting for us. My mom started cursing him out, saying she was going to call the police, saying whatever she could to frighten him. Instead, he laughed, waved at me and said, "I'll see you soon, sweetie," and parted with a smile. Needless to say, I didn't go back to Adventureland for some time after. When I was maybe 10 or 11, my family took us out for a treat by going to an amusement park. Naturally, I was stoked about this, being an over-enthusiastic, tomboyish 10-year-old that was always outside. Now, to set the mood, it was around Halloween, so there were scary decorations set everywhere. Not a skeleton popped out decorations, but I'm going to fucking haunt your nightmares forever decorations. I wasn't really unnerved, however, but I started to notice them more after, let's call her Harley Quinn, shows up. Why is she called Harley Quinn? Well, she was a 35-year-old chubby lady dressed as Harley Quinn, with a high-pitched voice that was creepy as hell, and a Harley Quinn suit that barely fit her. She was by one of the kiddie rides, by herself, no kids, sitting on a bench outside of the ride. Whatever, I didn't even notice her for long. Let me just take my annoying crying brother onto this ride, and then we can go ride something better. When she sees us get on the ride, her face lights up and she gets on herself. I ignore her. Still, it wasn't important to me at the time. And then she tries to strike up a conversation with 10-year-old me. Being a good little girl, I listen politely and occasionally make remarks myself, until the ride ends and she says, "Hey, wanna hang out?" Honestly, I felt trapped. I couldn't say no. No, I had to be charitable, I thought to myself. And feeling bad for this lonely lady, I said yes. She followed me off the ride. My dad was waiting. She goes up to my dad and says, "Hey, bud, what ride are we going on next?" "Excuse me?" "Which one?" We're gonna go take a break from riding." "Oh, okay." She proceeds to leave. I explain everything to my dad and he laughs it off. Later, my dad looked over and saw Harley Quinn by a sign to another ride. She was squatting over, pants down, pissing, while staring straight at me. My dad tells me to look away. And may I mention that this particular ride got jammed, with my friend on it, and then the guy next to us who seemed autistic rubbed his hands with an excited look on his face and said, "Oh, I hope it doesn't catch fire," while he was smiling. Of course, there were too many weirdos for my dad's liking, and we got the fuck out of there and headed for the exit. And there was Harley Quinn, of course, standing right by the exit, staring at us. "Leaving so soon? You really do know how to make a nice girl sad, don't you?" she said with the creepiest look on her face. We sped walk past her to our car without looking back. I thought to myself that she could have potentially been an employee paid to weird people out due to it being Halloween. And if that is the case, she deserves a raise. When I was a little girl, I loved to go to the local amusement park. I had turned 10 that winter, which meant that I was finally allowed to go on most rides and other things on my own. When the park opened during spring, my parents took me there and allowed me to go on more rides than usual as a belated birthday present. Best day ever, right? Well, there were 2 fun houses. I went through the more kid-friendly one first, to steel myself for the bigger, more adventurous-looking one. I had a good time, so I entered the second one immediately afterwards. Unlike the first funhouse, this one had more areas on the inside. I braved the first floor and waved at my parents on my way to the second floor. The second floor was a bit of a maze, which frightened me a little, but at least there were other people around. At one point, I bumped into someone. I say bumped because they actually groped my butt, but I thought it was an accident at first. At that age, I really didn't know much about molestation, let alone child molestation other than bad touch, and when it seemed like an accident, it didn't even register as such. Unfortunately, I lost track of the other people while exploring the area and ended up alone, or so I thought. I was groped again. I turned around but didn't see anyone. Of course, with the maze structure, it was kind of easy to hide quickly. I briefly wondered if it was part of the attraction, some sort of thing that shoots out to scare you, but there wasn't anything to indicate that, not to mention that it had been a rather distinct squeeze. Then it happened a third time, and I started freaking out. Of course, I couldn't find the exit immediately, so until I did, that sicko groped me another 2 or 3 more times. I didn't even bother turning around anymore. I just tried to get the fuck out. I don't know why I didn't just scream for help. I guess I wanted to pretend I was brave or something. When I reached the outside area again, nobody was following me. My parents were obviously very relieved when I finally showed up. Later, they told me that they were close to entering the funhouse themselves because it had taken me so long. I didn't tell my parents about the groping because, at that time, I just thought that someone had tried to scare me. The realization of what had actually taken place a couple of years later was rather chilling. It was the night of the carnival in my town, and I was just having fun with my friends. My friend wanted me to walk her home so she could get a different shirt for some weird reason. I began to walk her home and my other friend caught up with us, and he decides to tag along. We finally got to her shady apartment building. I waited outside with our friend while she took forever. We were just talking about random things, and then this guy that looked like he was in his 60s walked down the stairs. He stood right next to us and lit up a cigarette. My friend and I got quiet. He looked at me, then started conversating with me. You would think it would be a normal conversation about the weather, but it was strange. It was about self-defense and how all women should know how to defend themselves. I agree with this, and I've had about 5 years of self-defense training. He just kept talking to me, ignoring my guy friend. The conversation got to the point where he was talking about rape. I was very quiet at this point, and I wanted to run, but I was frozen. My friend finally walks out of her apartment building to see this guy talking to me. She walks over to us and listens. He finishes his cigarette and smiles at both of us, still ignoring the existence of my guy friend. He turns to my friend and introduces himself as Jim's uncle. I saw the worry fill her eyes. He turned back to me, and then her again. Then, looking and smiling at both of us, he said, "If I was a rapist, I would rape both of you." His grin grew wider. The 3 of us looked at each other with horrified expressions on our faces. The man looked down at his watch, then back at us, and said, "You girls have a nice time at the carnival tonight." Then he walked away. My friend looked at both of us and said, "There is no gym in my apartment building, and that guy was at the carnival before we left. We walked quietly back to the carnival, and there he was getting out of his car, going into the empty funhouse. After my first semester of university, at the beginning of May, I decided to reward myself by getting tickets for a band I wanted to see. They weren't playing in my hometown, unfortunately, and the nearest venue that they were playing was in a small town 6 hours away by train. I had a friend who attended a university in the town who agreed to let me stay with her, so I figured that I would be fine to go up. I had never been to this town before, but having lived in larger cities my entire life, I often associate small town with safety. I declined my friend's offer to drive me to the concert, considering she was studying for finals, and I enjoy a good walk. The town was divided by a river, and to cross that river you had to go over one bridge, then walk through a park on an island, then cross a second bridge to get back into town. To get to the first bridge from my friend's university, you had to walk down a nature trail. All this was perfectly lovely, as I did it at sunset. I had just emerged from my first winter in a rather harsher environment than I had grown up in, and the whole nature trail park combo was filled with joggers and children playing, and squirrels and everything that I had missed. This is only noteworthy in that I felt completely at ease with my route, but I was pretty distracted and didn't pay a whole lot of attention to exactly which path I had taken. The concert didn't let out until probably slightly past midnight. I got to the first bridge, crossed, and proceeded across the island to the second bridge. It was a nice night out, and I was actually sort of enjoying myself in the warm spring air. That is, until I got to a hill I didn't remember walking over on the way there. I stopped at the base of it, feeling that something was off, but eventually attributing it to the fact that I had somehow forgotten an entire hill. How funny, I thought as I walked up the mystery hill. All my thoughts ceased as I got to the top and found myself looking down the path into an empty carnival, and beyond that, the second bridge. Bit of context, I'm 5'7", 120-pound female, trained as a circus performer, aerialist, pretty much my entire life. This means that whatever extra weight I carry is pretty much all muscle, which serves, if for nothing else, as a boost of confidence, and also that I don't have any sort of fear of carnivals or clowns or anything. But walking over a hill, I didn't see an entire carnival and I don't remember it, and this definitely left me on edge. But I didn't really see any way around it. Literally, there was forest on either side, plus the bridge was right there. And besides, the carnival looked abandoned. So I start off down the other side of the hill into the creepy carnival, maintaining a quick pace, definitely on high alert. I kept my focus mainly on the bridge I was aiming for. I was most of the way through when I saw the people. I saw them from far enough away that I didn't jump, but I did stop dead in my tracks. They seemed pretty normal looking by their clothes, and I was too far away to see their faces. They were sitting in whatever was available. Lemonade stands, immobile roller coasters, covered picnic tables. I didn't really know what to do about it, and I'm not sure that there was much a better option available. But in the moment, feeling I had to do something, I started to walk forwards again. And as I did, I made eye contact with the first one of them I saw, and held it as I walked through them. The man I had chosen to look at, I remember very vividly, looking a lot like I imagined death would look like. A gaunt, drawn-out face with no expression of any type on it, sunken eyes that followed me as the rest of his body stayed still. From what I could tell, the rest did the same. I was terrified out of my wits, and for some reason, making eye contact with this zombie of a man was the only thing that I felt was keeping me safe. I never broke eye contact with him until I reached the second bridge, so far as to opt to walk backwards down the trail. I turned and crossed the bridge at a sprint, and someone shouted behind me, which only prompted me to run faster. Now, I mentioned that the route from the university to the bridge was a nature trail. This meant that it had no lights on it and was as black as the void, trees covering up the moon and making it impossible to see anything. I didn't care. I ran down the trail, tripping over who knows what, anything to put distance between me and the creepy carnival people. Eventually, I reached a patch of light at the edge of the university and stopped. There wasn't any noise anymore except for crickets and my own frantic breathing. If any had followed me, they hadn't done so for long. I managed to gather myself together and remember that I did in fact have a cell phone, which at that point I used to call my friend to have her meet me at a well-lit spot on campus populated by studying students. I told her what had happened and her eyes got really wide. As it turned out, unbeknownst to me, there were two trails through the park on the island, a north and a south one. I had taken the north one on the way there and accidentally taken the south one on the way back. She told me that people never, ever passed through the carnival at night, as it was where the local meth addicts and gang members would hang out. They were unpredictable at best, and at their worst, well, muggings were the least of it. I'd gotten off extremely lucky. So everything ended up being explainable, but somehow that made it even worse. I didn't sleep well that night, and when my friend offered to drive me to the train station across the river the following evening, I accepted. I work at an amusement park for a living. I can't disclose the name or pinpoint the location of the park, as it will definitely get me fired. All I can say is the park is located in the United States and attracts a fairly large amount of traffic, mainly during the earlier hours of the day. Though I'm planning to quit, hopefully as soon as possible, I can't financially afford to be fired as of right now. The park pays quite handsomely, and working there includes more benefits than any other place I've ever dreamed of working at. My uncle had close connections with one of the higher-ups in the park's management, so about 2 years ago he was able to score me a place at the park. I hastily accepted this position, as there aren't many high-paying jobs available for students fresh out of college. My first job position had started out as a ride operator, but over time, my uncle relayed to his connection that I could and should be volunteered for extra jobs in the park. Little things like filling in for absentees for the day were the jobs that sprung up often. That's when shit would go down. I saw the strangest, most terrifying and awful things in that park. That's why I'm here. I'm going to expose to you the most gritty and unexplained events that I've experienced firsthand. When I started off solely as a ride operator, I was always told that the safety of the employees, as well as the customers, was top priority. I had no real qualms with this for the first few months, as I was just beginning work at my own operating station. But one night, after hours, one of my coworkers, Marley, and I were chatting very close to the ride she usually worked around. We technically weren't supposed to be in that realm of the park at that time, but we had taken some extra time cleaning up around Marley's booth. We were just casually talking before Marley suddenly stiffened up and her head snapped to where the ride sat, looming and stoic in the night. Her eyes were wild and had this strange glow to it. I couldn't place what was truly off about her at the time. "Would you please go up there and turn on the ride for me?" Are you insane? Someone will notice the gargantuan ride swinging about in the middle of the park." "Just do it. Pretty please?" She said this through gritted teeth, obviously annoyed. I grumbled, but made my way to the control panel to turn on the ride. The ride in question was one located in the kiddie portion of the park. It was mostly shaded by woods and was relatively small. It was no roller coaster, but it attracted a good amount of attention by our myriad of clients. A red and yellow spinning saucer-type disc sat in the middle of a curved blue cradle. When the ride was on, the saucer would spin as it went up and down across the cradle. It's hard to explain, but I hope the description helped at least a bit. When I turned it on, Marley just stared at the saucer as it swung back and forth. Then she jumped the fence, separating her from the ride. I screamed Marley's name and told her to get out of there. This was so extremely dangerous since the ride was backed up to the fence so much that only about 10 feet of space separated them. As I switched off the ride and strung 4-letter words together, Marley, still entranced with the saucer, yelled something. All I could hear was the phrase, "Give me to Caroline." As the ride just began to slow, Marley inched closer, closer. She got so close the wind generated by its swinging tousled her hair wildly, her golden brown eyes still fixated on the yellow and red striped disc. Marley flung herself into the ride's path. The ride bludgeoned her. The disc swung into her, tossing her body 30 feet to the other side of the ride before she hit the ground with a sound like that of a sack of potatoes. Blood and entrails spraying everywhere all over the ride and the concrete sidewalk of the wait line. I heard screaming from the distance, like nothing I had ever heard, and realized some time later that it was me who I was hearing. Within minutes, 2 of the park's managers approached the ride. One shook his head and mumbled something along the lines of, "Another one." There was no sadness or sheer terror in his voice, no emotion whatsoever, and instead of fussing over Marley, both men started fussing over me. "It's okay. It happens sometimes. She's fine. Shh." They wrapped me in a blanket that they all too conveniently had on hand and pet my hair, which I found really creepy even at the time. It took me an hour to get to the point where I stopped screaming and crying profusely. It was then that I noticed that the police hadn't shown up. Neither had an ambulance. Only a bored-looking janitor sporting a stained trash cart showed up and dropped the body into it with a thump. It was awful. When I tried to explain what had happened, the managers just shook their heads and feigned grief and remorse when saying, "We know. It happens sometimes." They basically sat with me for a few hours, having me confirm I wouldn't disclose this minor accident to anyone and promote chaos among our visitors. Overall, they were acting so calm and suspicious, as if this has happened at least hundreds of times before. The next night, as my mind relayed what had happened, I realized that my large salary didn't come free. I was being paid to keep my mouth shut about terrible things that went and were to later go wrong. I've been debating the best options for not only myself, but for the good of Marley's family, the park's visitors, and the families of previous victims fallen on account of the park's apparent mismanagement ever since the night I witnessed an innocent woman's suicide. I decided first to contact Marley's family because I wanted to apologize face to face for what had happened, which would be very difficult to do after the police were to get involved. But unfortunately, as a thorough Google search turned up, Marley's immediate family, her 2 sisters, twin brother, and her parents had all committed suicide, each death spanning exactly 1 year from the next familial suicide. First it was Marley's father, then leading on to her twin brother, then her mother, her oldest sister, then finally, her other sister had committed suicide. Marley's death coincided with her family's death dates perfectly, September 17th, and exactly 1 year after her older sister's death in 2013. As of right now, I still don't know how that ties into what had happened that night. After proving unsuccessful with Marley's immediate family, I decided I had to get in contact with the next familial tier, first cousins, aunts, uncles, etc., and finally, after what had to be hours of searching, I was able to unearth the phone number of one of Marley's cousins, Nan, who was apparently just 2 years younger than her. I immediately texted her inquiring about a visit since Nan and her family only lived about an hour or so away from me. Long story short, Nan was really sweet about it all. When I told her that I would rather discuss what had happened in person rather than on the phone or over text, she graciously agreed to meet at her house. The only warning she had for me was that her parents were really sensitive about Marley and her immediate family, as apparently a few years ago they had some big argument that had escalated into a full-out feud over the course of only a few weeks. With this in mind, I started the drive over to Nan and her parents' house about an hour later after I received the residents' address. I was so nervous, but I felt as though a piece of this gargantuan weight would be lifted off of my shoulders, at least temporarily. I rang the doorbell and Nan greeted me with a crooked smile that was cute at the time. She escorted me inside. I met her parents, explained that I had information on a now missing Marley, then witnessed a compilation of perplexed looks exchanged from family member to family member. They looked not curious, but skeptical and weirded out. The mother, who we'll call Christine, offered me a spot on a comfy-looking leather armchair, to which I accepted. I began by stating that I worked in an amusement park, and when questioned the name of it, I reluctantly introduced the park's name. A chorus of "Ohs" and "I love that place" answered me in return. I squirmed inwardly. After a few brutally silent seconds, I launched into what I had witnessed, my words rocketing into the homey, awkwardly warm room's brittle silence. My story just kind of hung in the air for a second before Nan's sister started laughing. Then the rest of her family joined her. They were laughing so hard their faces became rosy pink, graduating into an ugly, splotchy red. Then, I heard a phrase I will never look at the same again. "Ding dong, the witch is dead." This little comment made by Nan's sister sent the family reeling into a roaring cacophony of laughter. "I'm being serious." I was so stunned by the reaction, my emotions a mix between offense and this awkward horror I've never really experienced before yesterday. "We know. We believe ya," Nan's dad, Richard, chirped up. I was horrified to say the least. Richard's hiccuping laughter was cut short all of a sudden. On his face, the glee and humor that was there literally just a second ago melted into pure, unfiltered, fucking rage. He stood up, turned to his family who were collectively still laughing, but just a bit more hesitantly now. "Stop fucking laughing!" Everyone's laughter then faded into nervous chuckles, then died off into dead silence. "I fucking mean it! I said stop laughing!" As he said this, more like screamed this, he grabbed a chair from the room, then rammed it into a window, causing it to shatter into a million fragments glinting in the sun, Richard yelling incoherently the entire time. Now, I know for a goddamn fact that windows, or at least the ones that I've encountered, do not break easily. The fact that this man had just splintered the wooden frame around the window as well, without even hitting it, was kind of unsettling. Then Richard spun around. He charged Christine with a chair. Christine fell over, unconscious with a gash on her temple. Nan's sister fled the house while I just sat there, paralyzed. Nan screamed fruitlessly at her dad, then said that she was going to call the police, and told me to leave. I was glad to show myself out after whatever the fuck had just happened. I drove myself back home last night and wasn't able to sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the house full of crazies. I'm sorry if this post wasn't really coherently written, as my mind is still reeling and struggling to process what happened yesterday. We went to Efteling the other day. To the people who aren't from the Netherlands, a lot of you guys, I guess, it's an amusement park and kind of a big thing around these parts. I guess you could compare it to Disneyland, only a lot smaller and cozier. Gezellig, we would call it in Dutch. After last week, I don't think it's that gezellig anymore. My buddy and I go almost every year, so we have some experience with the theme park code. On a busy day, you should try the coolest ride immediately while people are still entering the premises. The road to our favorite roller coaster took us past the haunted house, and as we passed the big walls of the house, I noticed something peep out between two dark stones. I'm a curious guy and had to know what it was, so I walked over. With some effort, I pulled out a red notebook. My friend looked back at me from a distance, an annoyed look on his face. "Come on, dude," he yelled. "We probably have to wait in line already." "Look at this," I answered, pointing to the crumbled book in the air. "I just pulled it out of the wall. Some stupid kid probably pushed it in there," he told me, clearly not interested in the least. "Let's go." I nodded, but put the book in my backpack. During the day, in between waiting lines, I read all of it. It was a journal from another park visitor, and it was pretty disturbing. The book was pretty much falling apart, so I've listed some of the fragments from it below. Tuesday. I told my shrink I like to write, so she advised me to start a journal about my experiences and feelings. So, yeah, here we go. Where to start? I hadn't had the best year. Actually, it was pretty awful. Terrible shit happened. I feel no need to write about it now, maybe later. I'm finally tuning down on the antidepressants and feeling a little better, so let's hope the worst is behind me. My kid brother invited me to an amusement park the other day. I think I'm gonna go. It was my favorite park as a kid, and I'm feeling up for it. Saturday. Plenty to write about, because a cool day turned out to be pretty freaky. I guess I'll start with the good stuff. I immediately recognized that gratifying feeling of excitement when I entered the theme park. It took me back to my youth when things weren't so fucked up. Good times. I hadn't been in the Efteling for 15 years, so they built like 4 new roller coasters since then. As my brother and I made our way to one of them, I first encountered him. Or should I say, it. I don't know exactly, but I'll get to that later. Anyway, we walked past the haunted house, crossed the little square next to it, and I glanced at a food place. I locked eyes with him accidentally. The puppet stood behind one of the windows above the food stand. It wasn't especially well made, but to me it stood out. Perhaps it was because he looked straight at me, an angry frown on his crooked, wrinkly face. His eyes startled me the most. They had such a lifelike quality. I could feel the anger and pain behind them. I didn't make much of it then, considering it just a freaky addition to the haunted house. Still, it already made me feel odd, unsettled. Despite the early hour, the line at the ride took us 45 minutes. It was totally worth it though. The roller coaster was the best. When we came out, adrenaline filled, I exclaimed, "Wow, awesome. We should go again while the line is still short." My brother answered he could use a snack first. I wasn't hungry but agreed to walk back to the food place at the haunted house. I had to pee anyways. While my brother was getting his ice cream, I went to the toilet next to it. Walking out, glimpsing at the windows above, I expected to have another encounter with the scary puppet. Except it wasn't there. I stared at the window in disbelief. My eyes moved past the other windows, but he was gone. Just as I decided to make nothing of it, maybe they took it away for repairs or something, my eyes found the open door beneath the window. Well, it wasn't exactly open. Somebody had left it ajar. Normally when I would see a service door like that, I wouldn't even consider entering. Things felt different now. The door had an attracting quality, like it was inviting me in. I glimpsed to the right, where my brother still stood in line, and couldn't suppress my curiosity. I crept to the door and slipped inside. I found myself in a very musty room like nobody had been there in a long time, and made out a wooden staircase in front of me, leading upstairs. After a short moment of doubt, I took on the creaking steps, dodging cobwebs. The upper floor was just as dusty as downstairs had been, but the place had a strange feel about it. It was very damp and suffocating, and despite several large windows, only a little daylight shone in. The room was empty. The floors were covered in a pile of dust, and the gray walls had nothing on it. As I crept around, I started feeling like a trespasser. Then I noticed something in a dark corner, a crumpled old piece of paper. I picked it up, coughing because of the drifting dust. A note. It read, "Perform the ritual in the room behind the haunted house. Shouldn't do any harm now. The room will be tainted though. Better don't allow people in there anymore. I think about what to do next. B." I couldn't make any sense of it. A private message, obviously. Then I noticed something at the corner of the paper. Dried up, dark red smudges. Was it? Someone grabbed me by the shoulders and I spun. I gaped right into the angry face of a park employee. He was old, like in his 70s, and looked vaguely familiar. "What the hell are you doing here, son?" the old man barked. "This area's off limits." "The door was opened," I exclaimed, baffled at the sight of the guy. "Thought it was part of the haunted house." "Well, it's not," the man yelled. His eyes suddenly flashed at something behind me. "Open the door again, didn't you?" he muttered, then turned back to me. "Out, now." I had already brushed past him through the room. Just as I went down the stairs, I dared one glimpse behind me. The park employee made no effort to come after me, but was just watching me leave. As I took the first step down, I swear I could make out a slender, long silhouette creep up behind him. Daylight greeted me as I bumped open the creaking service door, but my heart was pounding uncontrollably. My brother had just bought his ice cream and walked over. He obviously hadn't noticed anything. "Those shitty lines are everywhere," he complained, and gave me a strange look. "Wow, you're pale as a sheet, and there's a cobweb in your hair. Are you feeling all right? You want to sit down?" Panic attacks had plagued me for the last couple of months, and my brother knew about it. He looked worried, but I forced a smile and brushed the sticky stuff out of my hair. "I'm fine, man. Let's try that roller coaster one more time," I answered, with a lightness to my voice I didn't feel. As we walked along, I took one more look at the window. Nothing. So, up until now, I could have passed the whole thing off as being an awkward encounter with a grumpy park employee. This isn't the end, though. Far from it. When the park was closing down and we were heading for the exit, I almost forgot about the whole thing, up until we passed the window one more time and I felt a moment of shock. It was back. I watched the angry face of the puppet looking down on me and suddenly knew why the old park employee had looked so familiar. It was him. Not some vague resemblance. He had the exact same face. My brother elbowed me. "Time to go, dude. What are you standing there for?" I pointed at the puppet and he looked up. "What about?" he asked with a frown. "Did you ever see that puppet before?" I asked back. "Sure," he shrugged. "When Mom and Dad used to take us, it scared the hell out of me. It seems to move when you watch it for a long time." At that moment, a chill had ran down my spine. The furious eyes of the puppet had looked straight at me, seemingly piercing my soul. I'm home for a few hours now, but still feel a bit strange. Guess I'm off watching some Netflix and going to turn in early. Thursday. Apparently, evil puppets aren't so easily forgotten. The experiences of last weekend had got me worked up still. It's not just a feeling. Weird things are happening. First of all, I'm being watched. I'm certain of it. It doesn't matter where I am, in the lunchroom at work, on my bike, or simply in the bathroom, I feel like someone's always behind me, breathing down my neck. Sometimes I swear I can literally see a shadow hang over me. The nights are way worse though. Normally I would watch some TV and go to sleep, but lately I just can't. It's the weird scraping against my window. Just when I'm about to doze off, it starts. Real subtle, like someone is scratching the glass with long nails. I've tried to make up logical explanations, but I can't think of one. There are no trees in my front garden, so it couldn't be branches, and birds are also a no-go. They got no window sills to sit on. So what the hell is that fucking sound? I tried to check the window a couple of times, but I can't. When I get one leg out of bed, the noise suddenly cuts off. As I step out of bed anyway, mustering courage, something seems to freeze me. I get terrified and just can't move any further. Eventually, I manage to crawl back behind the sheets, hoping the sound won't return. It always does. I haven't slept for 3 days now. I guess I'm going to see my shrink tomorrow. Friday. I went to my shrink this morning and told her the whole thing, even the trespassing story. I'm not sure she believed me, but she did prescribe me something to help me sleep. That's a bummer. I thought I was finally rid of the pills. I guess I don't have much of a choice though. I called in sick for work the last few days and I'm so damn tired. As a matter of fact, I'm taking one of the pills right now. I need some shut-eye. Saturday. The sleeping pills work like a charm, but I've had a terrible night. I slept, for a long time actually, but there were also dreams. Awful dreams. I'd found myself in the dark puppet room, and the old park employee was there. He talked to me. "Keep the door closed at all times," he kept repeating with his hoarse voice. "Nobody should go in here." Then someone grabbed me. Only it wasn't him. It had unnaturally long fingers, pinching my skin. Just before I could turn to see what it was, I woke up sweating, still feeling that awful pinch in my shoulder. That wasn't everything though. I'm certain I saw a shadow zip away from my bed, going straight for the window. I don't feel rested at all, but I guess I'll go to work today. We'll see how that goes. Saturday evening. What a fucked up day. I came back from work an hour ago and can still feel my heart pounding. Jesus, I think I'm going crazy. It all went down when I biked home from work. This short trip always takes me through a dark park with no lampposts until the next suburb. As I rode, with just the light of my bike dynamo accompanying me, I suddenly made out the dark figure in front of me. It sat just behind the road in the big pond. I didn't think much of it at first. It was only 9 p.m., and it's a popular dog park. It was only when I approached the big figure that I realized something was off. The slender silhouette had a human form. I could recognize that much and was unmoving, like it was waiting for something. My instincts yelled at me to turn around, but I didn't. I wouldn't. Just someone taking a short hike, I kept telling myself. As I approached the figure, a head with long hair seemed to turn to me. Nothing to worry about, I kept repeating to myself. You're driving yourself crazy. Then I rode past it and tried not to look. Of course I did. I almost fell off my bike saddle when a skinny, pale arm reached forward and missed my shoulder by an inch. I glimpsed the glittering long nails in the moonlight and locked eyes with awful red pupils and a yellow-teethed smile. I screamed, stepped on the pedals, and didn't stop speeding until I was back home. I can't take it anymore. This has to stop. I have to know what I'm dealing with here. I'd figured there has to be a connection with the room I entered, so I spent the last hour looking up that puppet online. It was pretty disappointing at first. There are quite a few fan sites around, but they mostly talk about the big rides. The puppet room isn't mentioned anywhere. I did find something else though, and it was very disturbing. While scrolling through some pictures, I found a really old one dating back to the 60s. I had to look twice to believe it, but the old park employee was on it. He stood behind the controls of an old cart ride, which had long been demolished. The disturbing thing, though, he had the exact same age as last week, when I encountered him in the room. On the black and white photograph, he wasn't angry, though. He actually looked happy, with kind eyes and an untroubled smile. I've sent the picture to my phone and made a decision. I have to know who this guy is. Confident as I feel, I can almost ignore the small movement I just saw from the corner of my eye by the window. Fuck it. I'm taking another sleeping pill. Sunday. As I write this, I'm actually in the park at night. I can't believe it myself, but I'll try to describe my day. I slept in until 12 and went to the Efteling this afternoon. The trip took me quite a while, and I almost felt a bit stupid traveling that far. I shrugged it off. I had to know. When I finally stood in front of the park, just before closing time, I sought out one of the employees at the ticket window and showed her the picture, with this bullshit story that I wanted to write an article about the old guy. The girl threw me a weird look, but picked up the phone and called one of her older colleagues. When he finally showed up, dusk was setting in. The senior guy didn't seem in a hurry, though. He looked like someone who worked at the park for a very long time and loved talking about it. I shook his hand, and he told me his name was Jim. We sat down at one of the benches nearby, and I repeated my story about the article, then handed him the picture. His face had changed, going from relaxed to troubled. "Oh, right," he began. "Bob, everyone remembers him. From my early time at this place, at least." "Does he still work here?" I'd asked quickly, knowing the answer. "What?" Jim said, frowning. "Of course not. That photo was taken over 40 years ago, and Bob was in his 70s back then. He should be long dead by now. Except..." I looked at him expectantly, goosebumps on my skin. "I was 15 years old then, so I don't recall all of the details," Jim started. Devoted as he was, everybody knew Bob had his moods. Depression. He took some bad experiences back from World War II, went to a concentration camp. A lot of his family members were killed. But here at the park, he seemed happy. One of the reasons he stayed on beyond his 60s, I guess. Hell, It's the reason I'm staying on. Jim laughed. Until that day, back in 1968, should be around the time this picture was taken, there was some trouble with the haunted house. Broken mechanic in one of the dolls or something. It caused a freaky accident. I swallowed. My mouth felt dry. Anyway, it had to be removed, and Bob always had this strange fascination with the haunted house. Jim continued. He offered to take care of it. Let the mechanics do it, we told him. But he insisted. The old-timer had some experience as an electric, so we gave in, and there he went, the broken puppet over his shoulder. He remained silent for a minute. Then he continued with a soft voice. We never saw him again. I still remember his last words, actually, because they sounded pretty weird. Wish me luck, he said. I feel I might need it. Police never found a trace. Same thing for the doll. Jim shook his head and said, they finally concluded the poor guy committed suicide somewhere. Considering his mental problems, I mean, awful, awful thing. The doll? I asked after a few moments, still trying to comprehend what I had just heard. Did it look the same as the puppet in the window behind the haunted house, above the food place? Jim gave me a strange look. That old thing? No. I can still remember the doll very well because Bob held it so fondly. It was this pale ghost girl in a white dress, pretty with creepy long nails. Very nicely done, actually. My stomach turned, and I pried. So, you don't think the puppet behind the haunted house kind of looks like Bob? Jim gave me an even stranger look. What? No. Why would he look like Bob? That thing has been there for ages, he said, and suddenly checked his watch. Well, time to get going. My wife hates it when I'm late for dinner. He handed me a card with an email address after he stood. Send me the article when you're done, all right? I'm curious what you make of it. I nodded. After we made our goodbyes, Jim turned around and approached the employee entrance he had just come out from. That's when I made the decision. I sneaked after him, keeping enough distance so he wouldn't hear me. When Jim disappeared through the entrance and the door was about to close shut, I grabbed it and slipped inside. I hid myself in a remote part of the park between some thick bushes. I'm terrified, but I'm determined to go to that room in a couple of hours. I don't know why, but I'm sure I will find some kind of solution there. I need to meet with Bob again. Sunday evening. I'm afraid this will be my final entry. I'm here in the room. I'd left my hiding place and walked over to the haunted house, looking up at the place that had plagued my mind for the last week. The puppet had been there, behind the window. I could barely make it out in the dark, but its silhouette was all too familiar. With my heart thumping in my ears, I tried the door beneath. It gave in immediately. Once again, my instincts kicked in when I set one foot on the steps, screaming to go back, but my legs moved faster than my mind, and there I'd stood again, in the empty room, no one there. But it wasn't long before I felt strong hands on my shoulders, no pinching like in my dream, a gentle touch. Why did you come back? Bob asked with a sad voice. I was too shocked to turn around or even answer. Perhaps until then I'd always thought this was just some kind of crazy dream. You got out, but I'm afraid it was already too late then. Bob continued murmuring. The horrors of this world will find you everywhere. When they made their mark, they found me. A shame. A damn shame. He was silent for a minute, then spoke up again, louder. Ah, there you are. He's yours now, I guess. I'm sorry, son. I did what I could. I felt her presence before I even saw the slender silhouette from the corner of my eye and turned. A pretty girl indeed, if you could ignore the blood stains on her white dress and the red eyes in her pale face. She grinned, showing her yellow teeth, and reached one arm forward. Her long nails touched my shoulder, and at that moment, I felt all the dreadful despair of the last couple of months rush through my body and mind. I thought I had put it away, given it a place, but I hadn't. I clearly hadn't. She was dead. She was dead and would never come back. Never come back. There was nothing to live for. As tears ran over my cheeks, I had shrugged off her arm and ran. I ran for so long, but it doesn't matter. Every time I stumble through the exit, I'll end up in this room. They've got me trapped, or did they have me entrapped all along? I'm hiding in some dark corner now, trying to write the last sentences of my journal with just my phone to light the pages. It has no signal and it's almost dead. I don't know why I want to finish this entry so badly. I don't want to be forgotten, I guess. They left me alone for a while, but I can still feel them creeping closer now. I can't run anymore. Too tired. Wish me luck. I feel I might need it. Wow, that's some crazy Halloween shit right there, my friend exclaimed, putting down the notebook. We had sat down at a restaurant near the park exit just before closing time. You notice how we made the last words all shakily? That's awesome. Yeah, pretty freaky, but I can't help but wondering, I said, chewing on some fries. The place behind the haunted house, does it really have this scary puppet above? It sure has, my buddy answered. You've never seen that? He asked when he saw my baffled expression. He's been there for ages. I already saw him the first time I was here. I checked my phone and looked at him. My friend sighed, already aware of my intent. I thought we were going to get a beer, he complained. It's just an old puppet. You've got hundreds of them in the park. It's nothing special. We still got the whole evening to get drunk, I answered, standing up. Come on. It took us 10 minutes to make our way through the mass of people going for the exit, but then we stood in front of it, the illustrious food place from the journal. I looked up and couldn't keep a chill from running down my spine. The puppet was there, just as angry as the guy from the journal had described. When I came closer, though, it wasn't scary at all. The paint of the face was coming off and its clothes were in rags. It sure needed some repairs. Well, that's a disappointment, I said, moving my hands over the wall beneath the window. And there's not even a door like in the story. Told ya, my friend shrugged. Let's go. I nodded and started to walk away, but then asked, Wait, is there a window at the other side? I guess. I went around the food stand, ignoring the sigh of my friend, and found the exact same window there, parallel to the one at the other side. There also was a puppet. It wasn't old, and it wasn't scary. It was a young man, and his pale face seemed to look straight at me, despair in his eyes. That's when I saw it, clung in his right hand, a red notebook. Holy shit, my buddy exclaimed behind me. I felt my backpack. The journal was gone. Do you have? I asked, confused. No, my friend said. I thought I gave it back to you. You probably left it at the restaurant. Yeah, I muttered, looking up to the young puppet behind the window. Probably. I couldn't investigate further since an impatient park employee sent us away. I did manage to take a pic of the old puppet. Here it is. I also snapped the young puppet, but the picture failed. When I checked it on my iPhone later, the photo turned out to be pitch black. Could have been that I kept my finger on the lens. Could have been. I'm sure to check it out again when I go to the park next year. And you should too, if you ever visit. He clearly doesn't want to be forgotten. If you ever see an open door behind the haunted house, though, make sure to ignore it.